So first up, two mighty men with fantastic beards. Would you please welcome Liam O'Maonlaí and Martin Shaw? This is like... The Dubliners are back.
Where's Barney?
Where's Barney? So, Martin, we start with you, and can you tell us how you first encountered John and what that was like for you?
I would have been living in a tent maybe 25 years ago, and I didn't have a phone and I didn't have a computer. Do you remember the last century? Do you remember when you could just disappear? Well, I disappeared, but I had a dear friend, and I have a dear friend called Gavin. And Gavin had seen a glimpse of John on Channel 4 and said, there's this guy talking about Yeats, talking about Blake in a way you've never, ever seen before. And I'm bringing you one of his books. So he plonked the book down in the tent that I was living in and wandered off. And that's where it began for me. I was raised, I live almost in a sort of a ley line between the house of where Robert Graves wrote The White Goddess and where Ted Hughes wrote Crow. That incredible story about John doing the babysitting we found out for Ted today. So I would have been familiar with things like The White Goddess. I would have been familiar with a lot of the mythological inheritance of John. But what I had never come across before in a Western writer is the sense of the chant, the sense of the poem, the sense of the incantation that drives his stuff along. And there will be times, I don't know if you've ever, if you come to it in the wrong mood, you will fling it across the room. So I just don't have the time for this. Last time I was here, I said this story. Keith Richards from the Rolling Stones always says, I do the drugs so you don't have to. And I think sometimes John read the books so we didn't have to. And so that would have been it. It would have arrived at my door of a tent, 25 years ago.
Do you think that we have a soul?
I do, but not necessarily separate from the body. I'm a bit of a Hebrew in that way. Yeah, so I'm not very Gnostic. I don't see it floating around necessarily. And I wouldn't have any highfalutin ideas about the soul other than when I think of the soul, it seems to be a way in which I move towards life. The soul seems to not be impressed by much that I do. Oddly, I could do things that seem very successful in the world, but I have this odd intuition that the soul of me is not mightily impressed by that. So these are not rational things that I can give you, but yeah, in a fashion, I would.
Do you, Lynn, think we have a soul?
Steve Cooney told me, Steve came to Ireland. Steve was a master musician. And he was I'm branching off already, but he was a session musician in Australia, also very, very seriously on a spiritual journey that he's still searching and hungry and will seek that nourishment, and he mostly seeks it and finds it in his music and in the music of those who come close to him. He was given a yirdaki, a didgeridoo, the traditional instrument of the Northern Territory people of Australia. And being the perfectionist that he is, he went, okay, I'm going to go and find the best teacher. And he went up to a village, and he actually came upon a wall that he couldn't see. There was a force field at the wall, and a young man came and said, what are you doing here? What do you want, white fella? And he said, well, I'm here to find Blanasi, the master. And the guy said, all right, play. And Steve plays a little bit. And the guy, nah, play again. Steve tries to play again. Nah. And he plays a little bit. And Steve plays again. Nah. And then he plays again. And something opens, something like bing. and he plays, and, right, come in, and he meets. So Steve was adopted into this community, initiated into the divine relationship they have with everything. And I met this man, Steve, when I first heard he was here when I was 15, and then I was 20 in a rock and roll band. And a friend of mine said, we're having a session in the Chancery in Dublin, and Steve is going to be there. I thought, oh, cool. And that was the first time I met him. And there was such, you spoke of silence yesterday, there was such silence between his words, and there was such presence of everything in this sound that was so much more than music. And they sing their universe every day, you know. They sing everything into existence. And the dream time is the presence of everything. One thing Steve told me was that when the elders, when the people discuss things of spirit, things of vital importance, things that we're gathered here to touch, words are too small. Words are too unclean. And so they speak in the silent language when they speak. And the silent language, we all have the silent language. Every living thing has the silent language. They're used to it, they're not afraid of it. The animals have it, you know what I mean? So that's so.
So how do we talk about
Does that answer your question? Sorry.
Well, it keeps things moving, which is important.
That's why we're here.
That's more important.
Keep it moving.
We already don't know where we are. That's
Good. That's the best.
which means we're going somewhere.
What about you?
And
So,
it's probably impossible to talk about. I think you're right that language tends to crumble.
I feel my heart sinking when people go on too much, you know, about this, that, and the other. I feel my heart sinking.
So that's probably why we resort then to story.
Yeah.
And because stories are always interesting, you know. So I sit with a Zen Buddhist group at the moment, and that is mainly about silence and sitting, and it can get theoretical if you wanted to, but not everybody is allowed to discuss the theory. You do your own digging and stuff like that, but the teacher, so it's very formalized, but it
works,
and it's a very strong thing that language crumbles when you try to talk about these things. And that's remarkable with John, is that he's able to use language in a way where it doesn't crumble.
Yeah.
He can talk about huge things, and you could listen to him. Like when I got the box of CDs, that was a huge moment, because and I remember I'd listened to them driving home from gigs, and I always, like a winter's night where you might have been in Monaghan or someplace, and you get into the car and you're driving to Galway, and it's going to take you the guts of 3.5 or 4 hours, and it's pitch black. It's kind of, you can feel the weight of it. And there's me in the car, and I'm driving through deserted Ireland. And I always had the sense that when the people were asleep, the fields relaxed, and the animals relaxed, and said, "Jeez, thank God now they're don't be annoying us now until the morning." You know, so the countryside was breathing in a way that it doesn't breathe during the day. And I'd be listening to John and the Triddum Sacrum and all that, and it was that was my way. So if it's impossible to talk about for us before the heart drops, what do we do now?
We could see how profound a silence we can. Yesterday was amazing. That was
In the church.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
There's an old Orthodox word, hesychasm. Hesychasm is another way of talking about this unknowable thing, and the idea that you can't get anywhere near Jesus until you understand the silence of Jesus. And you get near the silence of Jesus when he's not answering your prayers. So that's something. Also, the Sufis say when you run out of language and when even the prayers don't work, it is usually time for a story. You know, and those recordings of John, aren't they amazing? As a writer, I often pondered how he put these books together and the kind of polish on the page he may have been applying. But listen to him talk. Listen to the inner rhythm of the thing. And this is pouring out of him. It's like a torrent. It's like nothing I've ever really heard before or since.
What did you do to prepare yourself for editing the hut at the edge of the village?
Now, here's the story. So I would have met Anthony Farrell in about 2019, just before lockdown. And we talked about the fact that against all conceivable odds, kids were getting into John's ideas. Kids, not necessarily academics. They were maybe 19, 20 years old. I was teaching ideas of John's at Stanford University in the States. And so Anthony's ear picked up on that, and he said, if you were addressing those kids directly, what would be the edits? What would you do? And so we put together the notion of a book that became A Hut at the Edge of the Village. And that is how I situate John. I see him as our man at the edge of things. So what I went through then was the reality, as Anthony will testify, that a lot of John's books and writings didn't exist in digital copy. So I had to type them up. So at some point, if you're looking at that book, you won't know if the grammatical errors are his or mine or just something we can't even talk about anymore. So I spent a winter actually in a cottage that right next to where Ted Hughes used to fish on the Dart River, just typing this stuff up. And the interesting thing is the thing I loathed about Moriarty's writing for the first 10 years was the Christian stuff. And I was always trying to find my way around it. I was always trying to get to something that felt more groovy, that felt more antique, until I realized his Christianness in the vastness of it was immovable, actually. You were never going to get past it. You were never going to lose the perfume of it. And so obviously in my own life, there've been, as Paul would say, you begin this process of falling into the mind of Christ. And I think some of that may have begun that long winter of 2019 when I was nutting out the book and sighing over John's continual references to Yeshua.
That's something you often hear about poets, isn't it? That they copy word for word the poems that they like of other people to kind of get into the blood of it. What's your kind of relationship with his work and stuff like
John.
that? Yeah,
It's amazing. It's just I was in a rock and roll band. I still am, and I fell into it. It's a reaction. I was always, music was always in me, and there was one part of me that was reacting to the fear of dying, of not going, death by not going to university. You'll die if you don't go to university. I don't know what. And so Dad, wanted me to go to university, and I had no vision for it. I got but anyway. So there was that mind, and then there was the mind that knew I could play and sing a song, and I knew that something changed every time a song is sung, and that there's movement and there's beyond explanation. And also, so anyway, joined a band, rock and roll band, and then I realized that there are ruthless feelings and entities, you could say, in the form of people who just will get anything to mine the natural resource that is in the kid, the boy. And, you know, whether it's what he looks like or what he sounds like or what the noise, and also the sort of the manipulation of human beings. So I met it very much, very head on, and it weighed very heavily on me. But I learned, but it also, music also, it had a road to Damascus effect on me. Something happened one day where music fell upon us, and I went, Jesus. And it was an exclamation. But it made me go, okay. And it gave me lenses that made, you know, that the road, it's a sacred road. And then traveling, like being somebody who sings indigenous songs from this land that resonate with infinity, and being somebody who's met Steve Cooney, who has imparted a beautiful consciousness to me, being somebody that is of that, and that being somebody that is aware that we have a mother tongue and we have another tongue.
Yeah.
Anywhere I go, I'd seek the same instinctively. I'd seek the dances or the people or the knowledge of North America or Japan or wherever it happened to be. And sometimes I just seek a pint of whatever they're drinking. But
when I was 21, I was briefly married, and the honeymoon was in Ireland. And you come over on the ferry, and I knew I had this little tape of Liam singing. I had this little tape. This is my favourite singer, like my favourite singer. Put me in the ground to the sound of Liam. Put me in the ground. In 300 years' time.
yeah,
But I want to finish the story. They were trying to get the...
I want to finish my story.
You get back to yours. They were trying to get the...
You come here.
Yeah. Half the people I meet over here say to me, if you don't tell an Irish story, I'll kill you. And the other half say, if you do tell an Irish story, I'll kill you.
Yeah.
But I was waiting on the ferry because I wanted to come on to Ireland to the sound of Liam singing, because I knew in some way there was a consciousness, even as a 21-year-old child. So I came over into Dunleary or wherever it was, but it was the sound.
No, thank you.
As you were saying.
So John, anyway, blah, blah, whatever, you know, that's nice, thanks.
What was...
Nice man.
What was North Africa like? Did you go there to collect music?
Well,
Liam,
yeah. Oh gosh, sure. Look, I become more everything than the people themselves. I just going around hugging everybody But John, I was introduced to by Mary Hughes, and she was a good mate of his. And you know, I found myself at a Medjugorje conference in UCD because I was just looking everywhere for a club or something, a VIP room of life. And I met Mary, who was an interesting woman, and she took an interest in me, and she said, you'd love John Moriarty. And she was friendly with another man called Leon Moscona. Have you heard of Leon Moscona? He's a mystic from Bulgaria. And Leon and John were her two guys, you know, these were her two. And I was curious about what she was passionate about, these people. And then one of the days, she lived over Hughes's pub. One of the days, she showed me a video, and it was John telling a story about a song coming to an island and how the song took root, and that there was somebody the next day working in the field and he's starting to utter the song. And you know how John would tell it, like, and that. So, and I just went, wow, great. That just made me go, oh, great. This guy exists. This person exists. That was kind of it. I found a cornerstone of some sort. I didn't seek him every here, there. Then I met him, and he'd do a chat. He'd do a show. He'd do a talk, one of his amazing talks. I remember one of the talks he did, and he'd invite me up to sing a song in between stories or after. My God, one time I did go on, and I don't know what it was, whether it was me, whether it was the bad pint I had the night before, but it was. I stood on the spot where he had been talking, and the energy was like overwhelming. Whether it was just whatever it was, but it was, anyway, it's just something that I just remember.
Yeah.
And he loved the songs. He loved the songs. He just was himself. I think that's the biggest thing about John, is that we're all here because there was somebody who just went, I'm this. And you don't need to be this, but I'm this. And I love being this. I love being whatever this is. Something like that. I don't know. Just maybe.
I get that sense of you, though.
I do love being this, yeah. What's there not to like, you know what I mean? Singers, go on.
Are you going to sing for us now?
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah, will I?
Yeah.
She had the ability to woo the birds from the trees. She had the ability to bring the cold body out of death. She had another ability that I won't tell you. She is Grá mich lévis mo chéad shark, my first love, and how fine it would be to herd the calves with her at the end of the day. Vi she on carp for on the moss. Vi boile kinach nered. O she grama he leves mo head shark. Avrinelin des o gistu is jeshemil chipok. Hons var hit bau by ganamart. Maristas mara hjolina gaunelat Eilenor narun. And there's one more verse on Jokato Nuawa Nato Eleanor narun Nuananyan Tenach Goinuhu Hajaguntil Isruin O Chukamezini Aname Ismanon Tena Gonyach me Every nilin so gestu is deshemil shvog khun swarit bel by ganamort Maristas mara hyolina gaunelat Eleanor narun.
Mahu, wow.
Okay. Thanks.
How has your voice changed over the past while?
Mine.
Yeah.
Some of it's changed, some of it hasn't. There's an essence that I recognize since I was a kid of something.
When you go low in it, it's like it is a didgeridoo.
It is. Yeah. You'd be right there.
Do you know?
Yeah. Very.
But have you always had that quality to?
Well, my dad was a low singer. My dad, so I heard him sing he taught me to sing. He gave me songs when I was 3 or younger. And I didn't know there were songs. I didn't know it was Irish, so I had no words for them. So he put a seed in there that has its own, that grows, and I've experienced it with my child's eyes. So I have no kind of complex concept that would be influenced by anything except its own nature, its own growth, its own karma, its own thing. That's song. So song and language for me were never things that were song and language. Those words came way later. And so Dad, and it was just things he gave me, and I never even, until suddenly I was a singer, and I'm traveling the world in a band and learning the school of life. And one of the nights we were down in Dunchain, in the house that my dad bought and restored, Charlie Garvey's house up in Caroon on Airtairig. And a stone house took away all the plaster and exposed the stone. Hashem Fos. Because he and Vincent Grummel, Oberchliche, freestone house. And the best Danbrick is, there should be one of these for Danbrick in Gortadoo. Carta gom vreemd dag wel. Van best. Ga. Aan de rinje gedeel. Lán de scéalta agus lán de chrack agus fiantas. Agus, anyway, yeah, so Ihuain, Vimuds Bailehe, we were gathered one night and my dad sang a song. He sang a song called Turarash and Ihirer, Bring Back Last Night. And I heard him. Yeah, it was the first time I heard him maybe with a discerning ear, if you like. And I went, that's amazing. And he sang low, but you didn't know it was low until you tried it. And he had a real gentleness, and he didn't adorn like I'm singing with adornment, you know, which I love. But he didn't adorn his song. He just sang the straight note, very straight. And I often find myself veering towards his style. So that would be an answer, a long, convoluted answer to your question.
Thank you for singing, and thanks for chatting.
Míle
Liam and Martin, everybody.